I grew up on the Central Coast, so rugby league heartland. My father grew up in Surrey Hills, so he was a mad Rabbitoh, played in the junior league here for Chelsea. So, but like many people here, my mum moved out of Sydney and up to the Central Coast for the cheaper house prices as they were and the better quality of life, and commuted for a while, but then had jobs on the Central Coast. So I grew up in Erina, which is right near the shopping centre and close to Terrigal. So I had a pretty much an idyllic childhood growing up there where summer was on the beach and winter was rugby league. No other sport on the Central Coast at the time. I think I first saw a game of soccer or played a game of soccer when I was 12. That game, everyone just played league in the winter. And so developed a passion for the game from a really early age. My dad coached one of the junior clubs up there at St Edwards. And so my first memories of childhood are being a ball boy for one of the teams he coached. So I was around rugby league right from the start.
The family is all Rabbitohs supporters?
Yeah, so my dad was a mad Rabbitohs fan. My mum's father was a tragic Rabbitoh. He grew up in Alexandria and worked on South Sydney Council for 30 years. But my mum was a massive Magpies fan. So we had a soft spot for the Magpies, but the house was pretty much Rabbitohs-centric. So you kind of lived by the church of George Piggins and Tommy Rodonigus. They were the kind of the heroes of the house.
Two working class clubs.
Exactly, and probably not uncommon for the time. Every weekend revolved around watching the game. Again, some of my earliest memories, my father's sister stayed in Sydney. So she lived in Kensington with my grandmother, and we used to come down every now and again from the Central Coast on Sunday afternoons, have a baked dinner and take my dad's sisters out to Redfern Oval to watch South play in the early 80s. So as a fairly naive kid growing up on the Central Coast, going to Redfern Oval on a Sunday afternoon was an educative experience.
I bet it was.
Probably the vocabulary was expanded. I can sort of remember the trips there and back and the excitement, and probably talking all the way home about the game and who played well, and grabbing the big league and reading through it and trying to memorise all the names.
No better experience, mate.
Yeah. No, there wasn't. It was, Central Coast, so, and particularly back then, was quite a sleepy area. You'd come down to the big city and go to Redfern Oval, and the colours and the sounds, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah. Magic. I grew up in that place, went there every week. My dad dragged us out there. The tragic South family that we are, the Chappells. So who were some of those players that stood out in your mind in those early to mid-'80s, mate?
I remember as a kid, Ziggy Niscott was the one. He was the captain at the time when I first started following footy. So Ziggy was probably the first player, and he had such a, again, as you're 4 or 5, what a name.
What a name.
And Central Coast was, again, pretty one-dimensional in terms of the demography. Everyone was white and Anglo, and to have a name like Ziggy Niscott was just so almost exotic when you're from Central Coast. So Ziggy was one of the players that I sort of first attached to. A guy called Joe Squadrito, again, another player that I really like watching. I think my auntie really liked him. She thought he was a great player. So I kind of just followed who they liked. And then as I got a little bit older, obviously Tugger was a great player to watch. Phil Blake, the back end of the 80s. There were some wonderful talents. My sister always liked Bronco Dura. I think she liked the name. And so that great team sort of from 85 to 89, 90, almost all of them were stars, and love watching them play.